Hello and welcome to the Business Purpose Trends podcast. I'm Phil Preston. This is episode 8 and your weekly update of less than 10 minutes. Now, following on from episode 5, which was a purpose innovation case study featuring the banks, this is the second in the bank series, and they'll roll out over several weeks, but they'll be several weeks apart. I guess most of us, or most consumers, certainly have a love-hate relationship with banks. We love it when they keep our money safe, but we don't love them so much when they help cause the global economy to tank, like when Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers and many others were the canaries in the coal mine for the 2008 crisis or global financial crisis. We don't like them when they rip us off. We had a Banking Royal Commission here in Australia several years ago, which found some very egregious practices. We don't like them when they put up mortgage rates, but that's generally not their fault. So I'll give them some slack on that one. And even though economies are doing generally okay at the moment, most people are feeling the cost of living kicking in. So when global problems are piling up on our doorsteps and a lot of people are doing it tough, we're very attuned to bad corporate behavior and we have lower tolerance, and that trend will only continue and tighten more and more in the future. Purpose, in theory, should be guiding banks towards doing wonderful things, especially if you read some of the floral statements that are out there. But the focus of this episode is a very nasty example of when it goes wrong. And we have to question, would a strong purpose culture have made any difference in that situation? And I'm talking about Wells Fargo. If you look at Wells Fargo's website today, they are still a little bit confused between vision, mission, and purpose. I'm not sure what their statement really is, but they say they're committed to the financial health of their customers and communities. However, this wasn't so much the case in 2016. Maybe it isn't even the case today, I don't know. But in 2016, it was found the employees of the bank had opened 3.5 million deposit and check accounts without customer consent, which over time has led to more than $3 billion in fines, their assets being capped by the regulator, the US Central Reserve, and their reputation and trust with customers on the retail and business side pretty shot to bits. So why did they do this? Well, it comes from an infamous cross-selling strategy that they'd set up, and they'd given their salespeople goals to create more than 8 or more accounts per customer. Now, you might ask, well, why 8? Well, it all came about because someone came up with a slogan that 8 is great. So the fact that 8 rhymes with great was the basis for setting this number. So it's always nice to know there's some really solid thinking behind that strategy. Employees focusing on specific targets like this that are numerically based tend to neglect priorities that don't have numerical objectives attached to them, such as customer well-being and customer or financial well-being, for example. According to various media on this all unfolded under the leadership of John Stumpf. His replacement, Timothy Sloan, resigned in 2019, and Charles Scharf took over at that time. By the way, I think it's pretty clear from that, to be the CEO of Wells Fargo, you need to be male and have a surname 5 or 6 letters long, starting with the letter S. The current vice chair, Bill Daley, who also came in 2019 with the current CEO, Charles Scharf, went on record as saying they really found there'd been no meaningful action. There was very little transparency about the problems and their causes, and the bank had been running big marketing campaigns since these problems happened. But Daley says that you can't tell a story that isn't true, and you've got to be very confident when you start telling that story. If you can't back it up, don't tell it. So the problem was that salespeople were very conflicted and were, incentivized to open up accounts that customers didn't need without them knowing. So that sounds like a problem. I guess the real question here is, would purpose implementation have made any difference? So if the company had a clear purpose statement and had integrated that or implemented it throughout its structure, I think it would have had a much more balanced set of goals. So at the highest level, the governance level, you would have not only financial goals, but you'd have many more social, economic, or environmental goals attached as well. And when you push this down into the everyday workings of the organization, decision-making should be aligned to that purpose. So at every step of the way, whether it's a new strategy, a new sales target, a new product, or new process, there should be something in that process to say, does this align with our purpose? And I somehow doubt that 8 accounts per customer aligns with a benefit. So just that simple question, how do our customers benefit from this? Probably would have put a quick stop to it. An interesting data point from the Deloitte C-Suite Insights is that 100% of surveyed CEOs say their roles are highly impacted by purpose priorities, yet only 45% have compensation tied to them. So there's a big gap there. And this is sort of case closed on this whole thing, except to add, in my experience of leading teams and this was in the investment world several years ago now, but I don't think the concepts here have changed. The team I was managing, we, I guess, found that our goals were very tied to portfolio returns versus index returns. And that's really what a lot of investment management is. Have you beaten the index or not? Now, while our portfolio returns would be somewhat driven by what the analysts were saying, a big part of that performance would be due to very unpredictable market conditions or events that were unfolding. And therefore, the strategy we pursued was to reweight their remuneration and their performance towards the behaviors that would drive the right outcomes rather than the numbers themselves. So, for example, were they being helpful to the portfolio managers who were using their analysis? Were they responsive to requests for more information or more clarification from the portfolio managers they were serving internally? Goal setting is certainly hard, but it's really powerful if you get it right. And if there's one thing that a lot of organizations don't do, and this is pretty universal, I think, across the board, is yes, you can have these high-level statements, but to actually drive it down and align the decision-making all the way through the organization is really, really hard, but you benefit so much from it. And right now, I think in general, organizations are way too narrow in thinking about how they motivate the right behaviors. So there we go. That's a bit of bank bad behavior, but that's probably the last really bad behavior we'll be talking about. I'm going to focus on more positives in the future, which would be nice. I hope you enjoyed this second in the banking series episodes. And there'll be, as I said earlier, more in weeks to come. They'll be a little spread out. I'd love you to recommend this podcast to others in your network if you like it, and I'd love to get your feedback. You'll find my contact details in the show notes. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Phil Preston. Have a great day, and may the business purpose trend be with you.